Welcome to Leadership English. In today's episode, we're going to talk about 3 simple things you can do to improve your leadership communication in English. My name is Tanya Suarez, and as your leadership communication coach, I'm here to give you the tools that you need as a non-native speaker to thrive in leadership positions. Now, the first tip that I have for you is relatively simple, but the magic happens with consistency. Read out loud for 1 minute a day. That's it. And there are 2 ways you can do this, and I recommend maybe do 1 week one way, 1 week the other way. The first is read 1 sentence out loud 3 times. Now, the reason that you want to do this is because it helps you with your delivery. So part of the things that I coach is, and if you've worked with me before, you know that typically non-native speakers will use a head voice. You want to bring that down, find your more authentic register, your chest voice. So that's going to help you with the repetition. Then the other thing that you're probably struggling with right now is connected speech. Most non-native speakers tend to speak a little more robotically, especially when you get nervous or anxious. So by implementing connected speech patterns, which if you've taken my courses before, it's the linking and the blending. When you repeat a sentence 3 times, it allows you to identify those patterns and be able to practice them. And third is I want you to visualize. Don't just read the sentence out loud. First, you want to be strategic. What sentence? Think about what your weaknesses are in communication right now. For example, if you are not that great at interrupting during a meeting, or maybe you're leading meetings and you're struggling with redirecting people so you can keep everybody on track, find those expressions, use that as your practice, and then visualize yourself in the actual meeting. Is it a virtual meeting? What are you wearing? What are you looking at? Is it in a particular meeting room? Who are the people in there? What does it smell like? The more you visualize, the more you activate that reaction that you have in real life. So that way you can feel the anxiety and practice performing and speaking through it. So that's one way that I want you to do that practice. And usually that'll be less than a minute. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you do it every single day, it's life-changing. And so this is something that with my clients, we really strategize a lot on, okay, this week we want to practice this skill, and this is what you're going to do every day. If you doubt it, or if you think, oh, I can do 5 minutes every day, don't. I'm telling you right now, you're going to start excited. It's the beginning of the year or the beginning of a new habit. And then that excitement's going to taper off when real life hits, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to quit. If you just do it for a minute or less, it's a lot harder to find an excuse to quit. And so that's going to help you with making it a more sustainable practice. So don't do it for more than 1 minute and do it every day. And don't think, oh, I forgot this whole week. I'll just do 7 minutes on Saturday. That's like saying I forgot to go to the gym all month and I'm going to get all the benefits I need by going to the gym for more time 1 day a month. It doesn't work that way. Pronunciation and fluency, as much as we think about it as something in the mind, it's very muscular. And so you need that daily muscular activation. Now, the other thing you can do, in addition to some of the days you're doing 1 sentence 3 times, another thing that you can do is read out loud for 1 minute. So this is pretty helpful if you tend to give speeches, do public speaking. Maybe you're reading a business book that has a lot of words or phrases that you really enjoy. So don't pick something that has overcomplicated language. You want to pick something that I usually recommend articles, not anything too heavy in the journalistic sense, because the speech that they use is different than what we use in speaking. It could be Instagram captions. A lot of times those are written in a more conversational tone. So by reading for 1 minute, it might be a sentence, it might be 5 sentences, depending on the length. Your goal is to focus on the breathing of fluency. With the other practice, it's about the repetition that allows you to activate different fluency techniques. With reading 1 minute consistently, you're going to notice that what happens is you're either going to get bored of yourself and realize, oh, my voice is so robotic. So you really want to work on intonation and being engaging. As a leader, it's really important to be able to activate that skill so that you can get people's attention, because your people are in meetings for 7 hours out of the 9 that they're working, and that can be really frustrating. So you want to bring extra energy when you have their attention to keep their attention. And you'll notice that sometimes you'll feel like you're out of breath. A lot of what I do with my clients is teaching them how to breathe for speaking English. And it's about doing a tiny inhale through the mouth instead of inhale, exhale through the nose and mouth. These are practices you're going to start being able to implement as you learn the intonation of English, and then you figure out where you can breathe to help it feel more natural. The second thing that you can do this year to improve your leadership communication in English is you're probably already doing it, but I want to change the way that you do it. I want you to read more business communication and leadership communication books. I love those books. I think they're great. However, as a non native speaker, I find that what happens is it's either very hard to do because reading in English is slower than your native language. You overthink it, you activate student mode. And so you either take too long reading one book, or more realistically, you quit. So you start reading it, then life gets busy. And again, it's not sustainable because it's not enjoyable. And so I want you to read more, but I want you to study less. So what happens with people that I work with, because you're in a leadership position, you probably are the ambitious type, A type. So you always want to be an overperformer. And how that manifests in terms of reading skills is that you tend to study the book. Most of you were probably really good students, or you're just really efficient at learning. And so you want to underline words, you want to figure out what phrases are being used. So what it does is it's not only is reading in English slower to begin with for you, but it slows down that process even more. And then you get so caught up in the grammar and the nuance and all these little things that you don't appreciate the bigger picture, which is the theories and the strategies that are being presented, and then focus on implementation. So this year, I want you to get out of student mode, stop studying business and leadership books. I want you to read them and implement the strategies. So a couple of ways to do this is I actually recommend what I do with my clients when I pick books for them is I'll send them a video from YouTube. Most of the more popular books, people have already reviewed them. I'll do either a review, sometimes like an animated summary. People will make like a 3 to 5 minute video about the main points. So you start with already understanding the main points. That way, when you're reading the book, those will pop out more. And from a cognitive perspective, it helps with retention. So I like to think about it as getting myself hyped, getting myself excited about the points that I'm going to read more in depth about. So that's a tiny way to start. Secondly, I want you to read the physical or digital book at the same time as the audiobook. If you're already an audiobook person, that's great. Keep doing it. But I would recommend to also implement this strategy because there is something really powerful from a grammar perspective to be exposed to the sentence structure, to hear the intonation and how the rhythm ends up being from this like static written form to the delivery of the verbal form. You'll also get more familiar with spelling. You'll get more familiar with phrasal verbs just through exposure. So it does activate that a little bit more. And it has the side benefit of helping you be a faster reader in English. This is something that I'm working with a client right now. It can be frustrating when you have so much content to prepare for your meetings, for your presentations, even something as simple to other people like reading emails can be a slower process for a non-native speaker. And so by combining the audiobook with the digital, it's really interesting because I asked my client, how long does it take you to read a book typically? Because she loves business books. She's like, well, a few months. And so I looked at the audiobook and I'm like, listen, if you read it with the audiobook, you can read this full book, like 400 pages in 5 hours and 45 minutes. And she has a long flight planned to Dubai in a few weeks. And she's like, oh, I could read that on my flight. Like, yes. So this will help you experience the success and the just fulfillment, because I love reading, of being able to read in English faster. And it forces you to let go of the underlining and the studying because you have to just enjoy the audio with the written. And so the goal there is to be able to, because you've already exposed yourself to the main points with the video, and now you're doing the audio and digital, you're able to appreciate the message, the delivery. A big part of these books, especially I find when it's a really good narrator or the author is a really good speaker and they narrate the book, the audiobook, you also see the power of how intonation and delivery can impact motivation, can impact buy-in, can impact just persuading you to try this new strategy. So these are things that as a leader are more important than understanding every single word. So to recap, I want you to Read more. I would even say try to pick one book per month. Challenge yourself. It's 12 books this year. Sit down right now, go online, figure out what skills you want to learn, pick 12 books, do one each month with the physical and the audiobook, and just challenge yourself that if you are able to finish it by the end of the month, great. And if not, move on to the next one. Just see what it feels like. For some of you, it might be really uncomfortable not to finish the book. Again, this is not school. You have no tests coming up. So part of it's also accepting that partially done is better than not done at all. And that's really hard for type A people, but you've got to think about the bigger benefit. Sometimes understanding just the main points, going a little bit in depth and then moving on, that's going to get you more than reading this book. And every time you look at it, you're going to feel like a failure because you've been reading it for 6 months and it's only 300 pages. So it's not adding to your confidence and it's not adding to your leadership communication skills. All right. And the third tip to improve your leadership communication in English this year is actually not about speaking. It's about listening. As a leader, you need to listen more than you speak. This is a great leadership tip in general, but it's even better for you as a non-native speaker because it's less pressure on the speaking part. But where you're probably going to struggle is that you have to listen actively. And as a non-native speaker, what I find tends to happen is you look like you're listening, but what you're really doing is you're like a fourth of your brain is listening and the other 3/4 are planning what you want to say. That's not active listening. It takes practice, but it's possible. So what you want to do is you want to trust, and this is a big deal. You have to trust that you can respond, that you can come up with what you need in the moment. So you can actually listen actively. You can look at their body language. You can really understand what they're presenting to you so that you can then respond from your level of expertise. Now, the other benefit of listening actively is you're going to start listening with more curiosity. So instead of listening and planning, you're going to listen and be curious about what more information do you need? What part of your expertise, what memory do you have that you can share that will help this person? Now, when you're listening with curiosity, in terms of the speaking component, you're going to want to find maybe, I would recommend 2 or 3 questions. Remember, we always want to keep it simple that you can ask as a follow-up. And this might sound simple because it can be as plain as, what do you mean by that? But you want to practice your delivery because if you're just thinking it and you've never practiced it, what do you mean by that? That's going to sound aggressive to the other person and they're not going to feel like it's a safe space to open up and really get your feedback on what they need. So you just want to practice. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? You want to practice even the fillers. You want to figure out what's your thinking face. This is a really great moment for you to really identify what kind of leader you want to be perceived as. This is all part of executive presence. Do you want to be an empathetic, patient leader? Do you want to be the kind of leader that leads through asking questions, usually the Socratic method? Or do you want to be the kind of leader who assesses, gets all the information, and gives a really quick, actionable tip or feedback? So this allows you to carve out the kind of executive presence that you want to present. And it has to do with these little moments that adds to your reputation, that adds to your communication. It's really powerful and it sounds simple, but it does take time and strategy. Now, the other benefit with when you're listening actively, you're not planning. This might have the effect of making you rush to respond because you're like, oh, I didn't plan. I just need to say something real quick. Remember, you're leaning in with curiosity. I don't want you to respond immediately, especially as a leader, but this is also a good tip in general. Take a moment to breathe. Use a filler like, well, and it's really interesting because at the beginning of your English journey, I feel like we always train, don't use fillers, don't use fillers. At this more advanced level of communication and in leadership, we want to use fillers strategically. And so this allows you to, let me put it to you this way. If you just respond really quickly, you think that you're proving yourself. You think that you're proving that your English is good enough, that you know what you want to say, but it has the opposite effect. It makes you come across as more anxious, which can sometimes read as insecure. So I'll just give you a quick example. If someone says, what do you think we should do about the production? We should make sure that the production is outsourced. there's so much nervous energy there. And so you think, oh, I spoke quickly, my English was good. But look at the strategy. So, again, the question being, what should we do about production? Well, can you tell me a little bit more about what the issue is with production again? They explain it. You're like, okay. Well, with that in mind, I think it would be the most strategic move to outsource production. So much calmer. Think about how they're going to take your advice. And so this is a really, really powerful strategy to help you not only connect with people, be a better listener for the sake of being a better listener, but also to be able to share your expertise in a way that makes a difference. Because bottom line, you're not following my videos, you're not working your leadership communication just to be a friendly person. There is strategy at the end, and the goal is to move the needle forward, to increase revenue, to make it a great workplace. These are all the goals that we have with this particular kind of communication. And so with that, I do want to leave you with one more tip of observation. I want you to observe yourself. How often are you trying to react really quickly and say something really fast? And I want you to analyze why. In my experience, the reason people, specifically non-native speakers, do that at work is because you're still trying to prove yourself. I find that a lot of people, no matter how high in the hierarchy they are in terms of corporate, there's still a little bit of underlying insecurity that if somebody hears my accent, if I make a mistake in English, they're going to doubt why I'm in this position. And I just want to remind you, you have the job. Please shut down that insecurity for the sake of you being able to thrive, if not for yourself, for your team and for your company. Your English is good enough. Does that mean it can't be better? No, of course it can be better. Everybody's communication can be better, regardless of whether it's your native language or not. But I want you to remember it's good enough now. And in fact, the problem I have with coaching non-native speakers is that their English is too much. You'll use much better English, much more complex structures than native speakers do. So what you actually want to do is simplify your English, especially for American business and corporate in general. We do tend to use a lot of corporate jargon, but the English structure, the grammar of it in terms of speaking and presenting, simple is better. So I want you to stop trying to prove yourself through your English, and I want you to be confident in your expertise and prove your worth through your work. And this is a really interesting shift. It takes a while because it's uncomfortable at first to think, no, but I know that I made a grammar mistake. That's fine. We all make mistakes. Is the value there? Your value is not in perfect grammar. So I really want you to take a moment and internalize that. At least give me the benefit of the doubt and try that for this year. See what that does. When you don't have to deal with that anxious energy of the insecurity, it's amazing how much more energy you have freed up to communicate, to think, to listen. So this is one of the best first dominoes that you can push to have a really amazing impact on your communication overall, and specifically your leadership communication. If you found any or all of these tips helpful, make sure you hit subscribe so that you get alerts whenever I have new Leadership English episodes coming out. And as always, remember, if you're interested in getting one-on-one coaching with me, I recommend applying to my Leadership Communication Accelerator. So if you're thinking about joining this year, apply now. Thank you so much. And remember, your English is good enough. You are good enough. Now we just get to be better together.